The events leading to this moment had been in motion long before I even had a clue. I used to believe life was predictable, work hard, build a family, and love would stay unshaken. It never crossed my mind that people could change so drastically, that trust, carefully built over years, could be obliterated in seconds. There had been warning signs. Subtle at first. A shift in her tone, a distant look in her eyes. Moments when she sat beside me but was clearly somewhere else. I ignored them, convincing myself it was stress or routine dulling our connection. I was wrong. The truth was far worse, and by the time I saw it, the damage was irreversible. The night before it all fell apart, I stood on the porch, staring into the darkness. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of burning leaves. I told myself tomorrow would be different, that whatever was off between us would pass. But fate had other plans. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of the end. When I found out who would be presiding over my divorce, a cold unease settled in my gut. Judge Thomas Bennett, a man with an impeccable legal record, respected, disciplined. But that wasn't the issue. The problem was that he was too personally entangled, too close to be objective. He should have stepped aside. He didn't. At our first hearing, my lawyer, Jake Harlow, immediately filed a motion to have him removed. The request was denied without a second thought. With that, the trial moved forward, and my wife's attorney, Ethan Blackwell, because of course she'd hire a guy with a name straight out of a courtroom drama, went straight for the jugular. He painted me as a cold, ruthless husband who abandoned Sophia over a minor disagreement, cutting her off financially and keeping her from our children, Oliver and Emma. It was all carefully rehearsed, designed to sway the judge and anyone else who mattered. Jake fought back, countering every lie with the truth. This wasn't about a petty fight. I hadn't walked away over a minor slight. I had walked in on Sophia in our bed, with not one, but two people. And even then, I hadn't screamed, hadn't lashed out. I had simply walked away, assuming she'd take responsibility for what she had done. Instead, she torched everything. As accusations flew, I forced myself to stay silent, swallowing the urge to yell the truth. Instead, my mind drifted back to when I first met Sophia. It wasn't love at first sight. In fact, the first time I saw her, I mistook her for a guy. Short hair, petite frame. I didn't think twice. Then I saw her face and wasn't so sure. Soft features, delicate hands, no facial hair. Then she spoke, and that answered that. We didn't talk that day, but the next, we both reached for the last seat in class. She got there first. "Thanks for the seat," she said with a smirk. I stood in the back, swallowing my pride. A few weeks later, we met at a party. Neither of us had dates, so we started talking. And like an idiot, I admitted my initial mistake. She did not take it well. "People like you always assume things," she snapped. I let her vent. She wasn't ashamed of how she looked, just tired of being misjudged. When she finally cooled down, I pressed a finger to her lips, cutting her off. "Let me make it up to you. Dinner's on me." She hesitated, then shrugged. "Fine. Right now. Denny's." That night, we talked for hours. Same major, similar hometowns. Soon, we were carpooling home for the holidays, grabbing coffee, venting about bad relationships. Then, sophomore year, something changed. One night, she showed up at my place, crying. Her boyfriend, the one who supposedly adored her, had been eyeing Kavya women and mocking her behind her back. My roommates were gone, so we sat there, drinking and plotting revenge. The alcohol loosened her tongue. "Why haven't you ever made a move on me?" she asked. I was too drunk to lie. Didn't want to ruin the friendship. Her eyes narrowed. "So I'm that unattractive to you?" Before I could answer, she yanked off her top. For a second, my brain shut down. There they were, small, perfect, mesmerizing. I just sat there, stunned. Then, just as suddenly, she sighed, closed her eyes, and passed out. I grabbed a blanket, covered her up, and crashed beside her, still in my briefs and socks. Morning came with fists pounding me awake. "What the hell did you do?" she hissed. Still half asleep, panic shot through me. "Nothing. You passed out. Look, we're both still dressed." She blinked, realizing I was right. Slowly, she exhaled. I handed her some aspirin and gave her space, sitting on the floor. Eventually, she patted the bed, motioning me back. We lay there in silence until she pulled me into a hug and fell asleep again. I didn't. Later, over lunch, we laughed at the absurdity of it all. But something had shifted. I started seeing her differently, not just as my best friend, but as someone I wanted. From then on, we were inseparable. No grand confessions, no whirlwind romance. Just a gradual shift into something more. We spent every evening together, kissed often, and eventually, it became physical. After graduation, we got married, built our careers, supported each other. For a while, life was good. Our bond was strong, our bedroom life even better. We bought a house, had Oliver, then Emma. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. And while life carried on, Thomas Bennett climbed the legal ladder, eventually becoming the judge now ruling over my divorce. The friendly neighbor was gone, replaced by a man who held power with an iron grip. Thomas Bennett wasn't just another face at the block party anymore. He was the judge in my case, and that made him untouchable. Meanwhile, something was off with Sophia. She wasn't working later, yet we barely spoke. She was distant, distracted. Worst of all, she hadn't touched me in weeks. I'd heard enough stories to recognize the signs. When people cheat, guilt leaks out in strange ways. They grow irritable, overly emotional, defensive over nothing. And Sophia? She was slipping away. I traced it back to the last block party the Thomasons had hosted. At first, she was by my side, laughing and mingling. Then she wandered off, joining Claire and Lucas. It wasn't strange at the time, but after that night, she changed. I started calling her at work at random. Sometimes she answered sweetly. Other times, she was irritated. Then, on Wednesday, I called, and her receptionist said she'd left early, claimed she wasn't feeling well. I didn't call again. Instead, I left work early myself. Her car was in the garage. The house was silent. Then I heard it. Moans. Loud. My heart pounded as I moved up the stairs, phone in hand, camera ready. And there she was. Sophia. With Claire. Claire let out a breathless laugh. Hey, Lucas. Think she'd lose her mind if I did the same? They were too caught up to notice me. Too wrapped in the moment to see my phone recording. Then Claire said something that made my stomach turn. I wonder if we should pierce before giving her to Thomas. That was it. Lucas saw me first, her face paling. She stepped back. Claire, I said, voice cold and steady. Playtime's over. Let my wife go. Claire hesitated, then stood. Sophia scrambled for a sheet, trying to cover herself. I laughed bitterly. That's rich. 15 years of marriage, and now you're suddenly shy? I turned to Claire. So what? You recruit women for Thomas. She smirked. Sometimes. Sometimes it's for us. He gets bored fast. I clenched my jaw. And what? You pass women around like party favors. She didn't flinch, just shrugged. She'd be returned unharmed. I made my decision. I won't interfere with whatever sick game you're playing, but you're all leaving. Now. 10 minutes, or I start making calls. Then I walked out. If I stayed, I'd do something I'd regret. Downstairs, I poured a drink. Tossed it back. Then I threw the glass at the backsplash, watching it shatter. I poured another. Drank. Threw the next glass. Then another. By the time I heard the front door open upstairs, they were gone. Straight to Thomas's house. I sank to the floor, bottle in hand, and let it all crash over me. Betrayed. By my wife. My best friend. I tilted my head back, throat burning. Why God? I whispered. Why this? Why betrayal? I tipped the bottle back and drank straight from it. That's how the kids found me. Standing in the middle of broken glass, drunk, lost. They froze, eyes darting around like they'd walked into a crime scene. When they couldn't reach their mother, they called my parents. Soon my mom showed up, worried. She tried to make sense of my slurred words, but she didn't need them. A trip upstairs told her everything. Then came the questions. What happened? I stayed silent. A neighbor filled her in. Told her Sophia had left with Claire and Lucas. The kids asked what was wrong. I told them to leave me alone. Mom pressed for answers. I snapped. Screw off and die. Not my proudest moment. Dad stepped in, keeping his voice calm. He told her everything. Then they asked the one thing I couldn't answer. What now? I sighed. I don't know, Dad. I love her, but I can't stand her right now. Hours passed. Still no call from Sophia. After convincing my parents to go home, I picked up my phone and called her father, Mike. Sophia and I are having problems, I said. She left. Haven't heard from her. His voice hardened. What happened? I exhaled. I walked in on her. With two people. In our bed. Silence. She might say I threw her out, but I didn't. She left. No explanation. No apology. Just gone. A long pause. Then, what about the kids? They're confused. They found me half drunk in the kitchen. I didn't handle it well. Mike offered to take them for the weekend. I accepted. That night, I couldn't sleep in our bed. I crashed on the couch instead. By morning, Sophia's car and phone were gone. A check of the closet confirmed she had packed a bag. I got the kids off to school, took a shower, and noticed something else. The toy was gone. The bed was still a mess. A sick thought crept in. Had Thomas already had her? I shoved it away. After dropping the kids off, I called a divorced friend for a lawyer referral. He gave me a name, William Harlow, a ruthless attorney he had personally lost to. Over lunch, I withdrew half of our joint accounts and moved the money into my name. The bank suggested lowering our credit card limits, so I did. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. Declined transactions. Sophia had tried using the cards. Still no call. Not to me. Not to the kids. That, more than anything, was unforgivable. By Thursday, I called her office. She called in sick, her secretary said. Why are you calling? I hung up. I thought about changing the locks, then remembered I didn't have to. I had installed keyless entry locks years ago. All I had to do was reset the codes. Friday morning, I met with Harlow. Call me Jake, he said, shaking my hand. We clicked instantly. He had strong opinions on cheating spouses and consequences. I wasn't sure if I wanted to file for divorce yet, so we discussed options. If I went through with it, I'd likely lose the house, custody, and any chance of spousal support. At 35, I muttered, I could start dating again, but do I even want to? Jake leaned back. File a missing person report, he suggested. It'll show you still care. I hesitated. I know where she probably is. He shrugged. Doesn't matter. If the police check, it goes on record. I nodded. And just like that, the war began. When I mentioned Judge Bennett's name and showed Jake the video, his face darkened. My cousin used to nanny for them, he muttered. She was outgoing, until she wasn't. She became obsessed with them. Withdrawn. We never figured out what broke her. His words sent a chill through me. I filed the report. At first, the sergeant barely reacted, until I mentioned Bennett. Within minutes, a patrol car was dispatched to check on Sophia. After a long wait, a detective named Aaron Clark entered the room. Your wife left Wednesday, returned briefly to grab a few things, but hasn't contacted you or the kids. That's correct. Yes. You haven't tried calling? No. Try now. I dialed. Straight to voicemail. Aaron folded his arms. A patrolman spoke with Judge Bennett. He claims Sophia is fine, but can't come to the door. No crime, so the officer had to leave. I clenched my jaw. The judge knows the law. Aaron nodded grimly. And he's using it. I left the station, went home, and made dinner for the kids. That night, we all tried calling and texting Sophia. No response. Even her parents tried. Still nothing. By the weekend, the house felt haunted by her absence. The kids were quieter, lost in confusion. Mike took them for a few days to keep them busy. I stayed home, cleaning, rearranging furniture, trying to erase the memories of what had happened in my bedroom. It didn't work. After mowing the lawn, I cracked open a beer, then did something I swore I wouldn't. I drove to Bennett's house. I parked across the street, waiting. No movement. Finally, I rang the doorbell. Claire answered, looking uneasy. I need to talk to Sophia, I said. The kids are upset. She hesitated. She's unavailable. I raised an eyebrow. Since when am I Mr. Turner? Her expression hardened. Since you told us to leave. Claire, I just want. Leave, or I'll call the police. She slammed the door. I had expected that and recorded the entire conversation. As I turned to leave, flashing lights filled the street. Squad cars pulled up, officers stepping out. Sir, place your hands on the car. I complied as they patted me down and took my phone. Officers, I said, voice calm. There was no disturbance. I just asked about my children. We'll verify. Have a seat in the car. I watched as a lieutenant spoke with Bennett. Minutes later, he returned, clearly irritated. Mr. Turner, the judge claims you pounded on the door and attempted to force your way in. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Check my phone. I recorded everything. He did. His face darkened. Without a word, he stomped back to the house. A heated exchange followed. When he returned, he was even angrier. Bennett is pressing charges for trespassing and making threats. I clenched my fists. That's ridiculous. I agree, he admitted. But no arrest. Just a citation. Stay away from them. I took the citation, then made sure the Bennetts saw me wave it before driving off. At home, I called Jake. What the hell were you thinking, he snapped. She hasn't even called the kids. Jake sighed. Now we have a false charge to fight. But this actually works in our favor. If she doesn't contact you by next week, we file for divorce. Fine, I muttered. But I need answers. That evening, I went for a walk. Neighbors asked about Sophia. I caught her with 2 lovers, I said bluntly. She left to figure things out. Let the gossip spread. If she cared about her reputation, she'd respond. She didn't. Monday, I informed my boss about the citation. Sorry, man, he said. Take time if you need it. Just stay out of jail. By Sunday night, the kids returned, expecting to see their mother. She wasn't there. Emma burst into tears, then kicked me. I let her. She was heartbroken. Tears burned my own eyes. Mike stiffened. Kids, we're going to see your mother. I gave him the address. They left in a hurry. Over an hour later, they returned, devastated. Leah was in tears. Mike was furious. It took hours to calm the kids down. Emma clung to me, terrified I'd leave too. Back in the living room, Mike nursed a beer while Leah wiped her eyes. Did you see her? I asked. Mike exhaled, shaking his head. She came to the door. Wouldn't acknowledge the kids. Just stood there while they cried. My stomach twisted. She didn't even touch them? Nothing. Wouldn't step outside. Just stared at me, refusing to speak. He took a long drink. She looks like my daughter, he muttered. But she isn't acting like her. I clenched my fists. What the hell is going on? Mike's jaw tightened. I told her to snap out of it, he said. But before I could finish, the cops showed up. My breath hitched. The cops? He nodded. A lieutenant apologized, but said he had no choice. We spent more time dealing with them than with Sophia. I ran a hand down my face. I should have stopped you. I thought she'd at least respond to her own parents. Mike shook his head. No, this needed to happen. Now Leah, and I can testify she refused to acknowledge her own children. Leah sniffled. She didn't seem drugged, just gone. We sat in silence. Mike shook my hand. Leah hugged me. Then they left. The next morning, Jake called. I sent your video and unanswered calls to the ADA, he said. I held my breath. And they won't prosecute you. Relief flooded me. They're more concerned about the false report, he added. Good. At noon, I ran errands and stopped at a mailing center to send a card to Sophia's workplace. By 3 p.m., I got confirmation it had been delivered. At 4 p.m., I called her office. As expected, she refused my call. I ended up speaking with her secretary, Amy. She's acting like nothing is wrong, Amy said, sounding confused. My stomach dropped. She hasn't mentioned anything? No. Silence. Then a hesitant pause. Wait, you're saying she's not living with you? I exhaled. No, Amy. She hasn't been home in over a week. And she hasn't even contacted the kids. A long silence. I don't believe you. I kept my voice steady. I sent her a card today, asking her to call them. Did she get it? She did, Amy admitted. Looked at it, then tossed it without a word. My stomach twisted. Can you check on her? I asked. Minutes later, Amy returned. She's been crying. Good, I muttered. Amy sounded stunned. Good. Amy's voice was sharp with disbelief. Cal, what the hell is wrong with you? She needs to feel something, I said, my voice steady. Maybe then she'll snap out of this. Every morning, I wrote a note, took a picture, and sent it to her office. If I sent it to the house, she'd never see it. At least this way, I knew she was getting them. Tuesday and Wednesday, Amy told me that Sophia actually read them before tossing them into the trash. Both days, she shut her office door afterward. By Thursday, she barely spared them a glance before throwing them away. This time, she left her door open, like she was daring someone to comment. She was shutting down. I had failed again. The kids were doing their best to hold things together. They stuck to their routines, school, chores, friends, but the energy in the house had shifted. Emma even made dinner one night. Hot dogs and canned beans. Oliver and Emma still argued, but their fights were muted now, the fire behind them gone. That scared me more than any yelling ever could. Every night, I stayed with Emma until she fell asleep. Some nights, I woke up to find Oliver curled up beside me too. I never moved them. If this was what they needed to feel safe, I let them. Another weekend passed. I started dividing my life into two parts, before Sophia and after Sophia. Almost 2 weeks had gone by. On Monday, I met with Jake. I told him about the failed attempt to get Sophia to see the kids and the notes I had been sending. He shook his head. "Damn shame we don't have video of her reaction to her father," he muttered. That afternoon, we filed for divorce. Sophia was served at work. Later, I called Amy. "She took the papers and left early," she said. Didn't say a word. That was the last time I called her office. Jake pushed for an expedited hearing, skipping unnecessary negotiations. He doubted she had an attorney yet, and once we got in front of a judge, she'd have to respond. Then came the disaster of a preliminary hearing. Bennett refused to recuse himself. Jake had assured me that since Sophia left voluntarily and hadn't contacted me or the kids, we had a strong case for support. That didn't happen. Bennett blocked every attempt to put Sophia on the stand. Blackwell, her lawyer, objected to everything and was never overruled. When Jake tried introducing video evidence of her affair, Bennett ruled it would be sealed. Then he issued a gag order. I barely got to speak. Then came the ruling. Despite having full custody, I was ordered to pay over $500 a month in child support and another $1,000 in spousal maintenance, even though Sophia and I made similar incomes. I got the house and the kids, but Child Protective Services would conduct routine checks. Sophia never said a word. As the hearing ended, I stood. "When are you going to speak to me?" I demanded. "To your children? They cry every night wondering why you hate them." She didn't even blink. Blackwell shot me a glare. I ignored him. Afterward, Jake pulled me aside. "Blackwell is a partner at Bennett's old firm." I frowned. "You think Bennett still has ties to it?" Jake nodded. "Wouldn't be surprised if he still has a financial stake." He later requested a closed-door meeting with Bennett. When he returned, his jaw was tight. "I told him I'm filing complaints," Jake said. He just shrugged. I clenched my fists. He didn't care? Not at all. Said the divorce is final, and nothing we do will change that. I exhaled slowly. So do we fight it? If we withdraw, she'll just refile, and Bennett will make sure he stays on the case. Jake straightened. "I'm filing complaints with the Bar Association and the Judicial Review Board." Weeks passed. Oliver and Emma started acting out. I put them in therapy, but I wasn't convinced it would help. They didn't need a stranger asking them about their feelings. They needed their mother. Now CPS would be making home visits. Since I was court-ordered to pay support, I tried calling Blackwell's office. He refused my call. I called Jake. "That's odd," he muttered. "They're blocking you at every turn, even when you're following a court order." Sophia's paycheck was still going into our joint account, even though I had removed my name. I hadn't touched it since withdrawing my half. "If we can't get answers," I muttered, "I'll deposit the support money there and leave it alone." To protect myself, I removed my name entirely. No one could accuse me of paying myself. The stress was wearing me down. I was losing weight. That day, Amy called. "Sophia came back from court and cried in her office for hours," she whispered. I had noticed it too. She looked thinner in court. Not that she had ever been heavy, but now she looked frail. No one was doing well, except for the good judge. The legal process dragged. Unlike TV, real cases took months. Then Jake called. My filings hit a nerve. "We're meeting with the Judicial Review Board in 2 days and the Bar Association next week." At the review board, the focus was on Bennett's courtroom conduct. If I had hoped this would force Sophia to speak to me or the kids, I was wrong. Bennett was represented by a lawyer from his old firm. Blackwell testified, dodging questions about conflicts of interest. The board reviewed my video of Sophia's affair, my visit to Bennett's house, and the false trespassing charge. The police lieutenant who responded that night testified as well. By the end, Jake looked satisfied. "At the very least," he murmured, "Bennett will face sanctions." For now, the divorce was put on hold until after the Bar Association hearing. That's when the truth came out. Maybe Bennett had enemies there, or maybe Jake had friends. Either way, they were out for blood. The hearing was brutal. Regular court rules didn't apply. "These cases take months," Jake whispered, "but this one is moving fast." Bennett's lawyer tried blocking a request for financial records. Denied. Under pressure, Thomas admitted he still received money from his old firm. He also retained voting rights. Then came the bombshell. Sophia took the stand. She confessed to relationships with Claire, Lucas, and Thomas. Directly questioned, she acknowledged being with Thomas and divulged his affinity for blending pleasure with pain. Her most harrowing revelation was about the night the police and I arrived at their house. She had been restrained in their dungeon. Jake probed about her feelings towards me and the children. Overcome with emotion, Sophia broke down. "I love them. I miss them," she sobbed, explaining how Thomas had taken her phone, leaving her unsure if we had tried to contact her. Tears streamed down her face as she recounted the agonizing moment. She couldn't embrace our children when my parents brought them to see her. Jake pressed on, and Sophia hesitated before confessing that Thomas had boasted about his connections from his days as a public defender, people who would do his bidding without question. Thomas's attorney was incessantly objecting, but the panel was indifferent. Next, Claire and Lucas testified, denying any relationship with Thomas and claiming Sophia was the instigator of everything. The hearing was devolving into a war of narratives. Then, a realization dawned on me. I stepped outside to make a crucial phone call. If this worked, perhaps things would start to make sense again. As the hearing resumed, the board grilled Thomas, and soon they recessed for lunch. I turned to Jake. "Is this being recorded?" He nodded, confirming audio but no video. "Is it admissible?" I asked. Jake stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Hard to say. Lawyers protect their own." Post-lunch, the board adjourned. As we were collecting our belongings, Sophia rushed over to me. "Take me home, please." Before I could answer, Bennett approached us. "Sophia, let's go," he commanded just as Detective Aaron Clark entered the room, having seemingly flown and given the rapid timing. He walked straight up to Bennett. "Judge, you're under arrest for abduction, assault, and any other crimes we uncover," he declared as Bennett's complexion turned ghostly pale. Before Bennett could respond, Clark had him turned around, handcuffed, and read his rights. Outside, 2 officers escorted him away. Clark then turned to me. "That was a good tip. Looking at Sophia," he continued, "your sworn statement helped us secure a warrant." I stiffened. "And?" His expression darkened. "We found the dungeon and video evidence of you restrained, of Thomas and others discussing their plans. It's worse than we feared. There are tapes of other women they seduced and detained." Sophia gasped in horror. Clark sighed. "Sorting this will take months, but we're on it. Claire can't be compelled to testify against her husband, but Lucas can, and she will." He looked at me. "The threat to you and your kids is mostly neutralized, but if anything happens, we know where to look first." He then turned to Sophia. "You need a hospital exam, sooner rather than later." Sophia barely spoke as I drove her to the ER. Jake and I checked her in, and after a long wait, a nurse asked if I wanted to join Sophia before and after the exam. I declined, unsure if I could remain composed if she sought forgiveness. As I sat waiting, it dawned on me that despite all the cards I sent, she never reached out, not a note, not a signal, nothing. She chose this path. Finally, she emerged, looking subdued. "They're done," she murmured. "I need to take antibiotics. Thomas gave me something." Her words hung heavy in the air, implying more tests were needed. We drove home in silence, my mind swirling with questions I wasn't ready to ask. After dropping Jake off, we arrived home to find my parents with the kids and Sophia's parents pulling into the driveway. Oliver and Emma ran to her, their questions pouring out as they clung to her. She offered only vague answers. Mike looked on with contempt, while Leah simply sobbed. For everyone else, it seemed a night of reunion. For me, it was just another night of pretense. Later, when the grandparents had left, and as Oliver and Emma fought sleep, fearful she might vanish again, I gestured towards Sophia. "Put them to bed," I said. "Emma needs you to stay until she's asleep." She complied, and I knew they'd be checking throughout the night to ensure she was still there. When she tried to sit next to me later, I shook my head, and she settled across from me instead. "I thought we'd cuddle," she said softly. "It's been so long. Haven't you missed me?" I exhaled deeply. "I miss my wife, my best friend, the mother of my children." She smiled tentatively. "Then I should be next to you." She leaned forward. "I'm on medication. If you have protection, maybe we can make up for lost time." I clenched my jaw. "We need to talk first." Her smile faltered. "Talk? Baby, I just want you to hold me." Ignoring her, I continued. "The kids should stay home tomorrow. We'll take them to IHOP." She nodded quickly. "Yes, that sounds good." You also need therapy. Immediately. She sighed. Cal, I told you. Thomas wouldn't let me contact you. I narrowed my eyes. You went to work every day. You could have reached out. People escape from prison camps with messages. You could have let us know. She was silent, blushing. We need to get you a real lawyer, I said firmly. I've set aside the support money, but Blackwell never responded. It's in our old joint account. I had my name removed. It's yours now. You should sue the Leals, she suggested quickly. No, she replied instantly. I don't want to be humiliated. I laughed bitterly. You think people aren't already talking? The moment I was arrested, the neighborhood filled in the blanks. Her face paled. You didn't. Oh, I did. Her eyes widened. How could you do this to me? To us. I scoffed. Us? You got caught in bed with 2 women, prepping you for another man. I told you to leave before I lost control. Then you sneaked back, grabbed your things, and disappeared. You ignored our kids. You refused to see your parents. Tears streamed down her face. You went to the office every day, pretending nothing was amiss, I said sternly. You ignored my calls, made Amy think I was fabricating stories, and you were plotting to divorce me, seize my earnings, and leave me to single-handedly raise our kids. I paused, the weight of our children's struggles pressing down on me. Therapy might offer some help, but there's no certainty. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed them, too. Sophia's sobs filled the room, but they left me untouched. There was a time when we shared everything. I continued, the bitterness evident in my voice. Then you began to keep secrets. You never mentioned Claire and Lucas. I had to discover you with them. Perhaps that was your intent all along, to push me to a breaking point, to see me arrested, to strip me of everything. Her silence was a tacit admission. My hands balled into fists. God damn you. I whispered harshly, standing up. I had to exit the room before my anger led to regret. In the kitchen, I instinctively reached for a drink, but then remembered. I had disposed of all the alcohol. I had children watching. I needed to set a better example. Sophia entered, her voice barely audible. It was foolish, she murmured. I was curious. Then suddenly they desired me. I remained silent. But Thomas, she continued, her voice breaking. He assigned me a boy's name and used it every time. Tears cracked her voice. He restrained me in their dungeon. I was at their mercy, then would head to work as if all was normal. I turned away, clenching my jaw. Thomas schemed to destroy you, Sophia whispered. He wanted you out of the picture so nobody would suspect. I locked eyes with her again. So you turned on him only because things didn't work out your way? Her expression was one of sheer desperation. No, I wanted to return home. I was desperate. Please believe me. A bitter chuckle escaped me. I wasn't convinced. You orchestrated this. You were willing to have me falsely accused. What you didn't anticipate was that Thomas was far more monstrous than you imagined. She recoiled slightly. Did you consider our kids? If I were jailed, they would be left in the hands of those fiends. God knows what might have befallen them. Her complexion turned ghostly. You didn't think about that, did you? She trembled, remaining silent. And you allowed it to happen, I stated sharply. It was late, and I was weary. I had intended to share the bedroom for the children's sake, but not tonight. I'm done. Head to bed. I'll sleep on the couch. I gave her a frosty glance. And be clear, if you leave before morning, I won't be here when you wake. You'll have to explain to the kids why they lost their father, too. She hesitated, then ascended the stairs with a resigned nod, likely relying on our past, on the love I once felt for her, to absolve her misdeeds. She paused at the bedroom door. Where's our bed? I smirked. Gone was the queen-sized bed. In its place, 2 twin beds were positioned as far apart as the room allowed. Just like in those old movies, I remarked. She stared back at me, dumbfounded. I shrugged nonchalantly. This is how it's going to be now. Her lip quivered. Now, I stated calmly. Go into that room and lock the door before I say something I'll regret. She lingered for a moment before disappearing inside. Sweet dreams, which, I muttered as I headed downstairs. By Monday, I intended to convert the family room into my bedroom. I couldn't share a space with Sophia anymore. She might attempt to seduce me, and I refused to engage in that game. She could live as she pleased, as long as it didn't impact the children. I didn't bother undressing for bed. Perhaps it was sheer exhaustion, but deep down, I knew I wanted to avoid any physical contact with her. Sleep came quickly, Yet I awoke to a gentle touch on my cheek. Sophia was beside me, tears in her eyes, whispering apologies. For a fleeting moment, I almost felt a stir of compassion. Then the anger surged back. She had shattered our family, wounded our children. Tears couldn't mend that. I sat up abruptly, rubbing my face. She reached out, but I recoiled. "Go to bed," I said icily. "If you persist, I won't be here in the morning. You'll have to explain to the kids why they lost their father as well." She stifled a sob and retreated upstairs. I glanced at the clock. 4 a.m. sleep eluded me now. I moved to the recliner, turned on the TV, and let the noise wash over my racing thoughts. By 8 a.m., laughter from the kitchen woke me. Oliver and Emma were playing while Sophia made pancakes, pretending nothing had changed. They seemed happy, and I reminded myself that their joy mattered more than my own pain. Oliver, now perceptive at 13, noticed the changes. "Dad, why were you in the recliner, and why are there 2 beds in your room?" He was quick to catch on. I shrugged. "I'll explain later. How about IHOP?" The kids cheered and scampered off to get ready. Sophia, still at the stove, gave me a sheepish look. I forgot to call the schools. I could have pointed out her oversight, but what was the point? "Already handled," I replied, heading for a shower. I locked the bathroom door, let the hot water wash away some of the tension, then realized I'd forgotten clothes. It was no big deal, I thought as I unlocked the door. Sophia was on her bed, undressed. I didn't react, simply grabbed clothes and headed into the closet to dress. She blocked the doorway, still bare. "Aren't you going to say anything?" she asked softly. I glanced at her. "Sure. Are you coming to IHOP, or planning to sit undressed all day?" She tensed. "Doesn't my body affect you anymore?" she asked. "Yeah," I responded flatly. "And my wife used to reserve herself for me. That's not the case anymore." Her face flushed with shame. I finished tying my shoes. "Get dressed if you're coming." 5 minutes. I passed her, smirking, literally stepping out of the closet. That old joke still made me smile. Downstairs, I took a moment before Sophia joined us. "Oliver, you're old enough to understand." "Emma, you will one day," I said. "Your mom chose to live with others." I didn't agree. It hurt our marriage, but we're still your parents. That won't change. Oliver nodded understandingly. Emma seemed confused, so I hugged her. "It just means Mom and I won't share a bed anymore, but we still love you both and will always be here for you," I explained to the kids. Emma giggled, hugging me tighter, reassured for the moment. When Sophia came downstairs, both kids watched her cautiously, as if she might vanish again. Suddenly, Emma blurted out, "I knocked on your door this morning. I found Daddy right away, but I got scared when I couldn't find you, Mommy." Her voice trembled with suppressed fear. Perhaps locking the door at night wasn't the best idea after all. We headed to IHOP. Breakfast felt normal for a brief moment, but such feelings were fleeting. Later, I dropped the kids at home and took Sophia to Jake Blevin's office. He handed us copies of the postnuptial agreement, his expression giving nothing away. "The divorce is suspended if you both agree to this," Jake stated. "You'll stay in the house until the kids are grown, or until Emma finishes high school," I added, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy for their sake. Jake nodded. "Fair." He then laid out another condition. Sophia must take legal action against Judge Bennett. Sophia shot me a glance but didn't argue. Jake continued outlining the terms. "Next, regarding extramarital relationships, Cal has requested an open marriage, with discretion. No public discussions, no bringing lovers home when the kids are awake. If someone stays over, they leave before the kids wake up." Sophia bristled at this. "No way. I won't let Cal sleep with someone else," she protested vehemently. Jake raised an eyebrow. "You cheated with 2 women, moved in with them, then had an affair with another man. You ignored your husband, your kids, and your parents. Yet you expect Cal to sit home, raise your kids, pay your bills, and remain celibate." Sophia clenched her jaw tight, but Jake turned to me. "Do you have someone in mind?" I shook my head. "No." Jake then looked back at Sophia. "Are you planning to see Claire, Lucas, or Thomas again?" She flinched, and Jake smirked. "Let me guess, it's Claire and Lucas." Her silence confirmed it. Jake leaned back, his point made. "So, You think you can sneak around, but Cole has to stay faithful? That's not how this works. She stayed silent, digesting the reality. If you don't sign, we move forward with the divorce, Jake warned sternly. Sophia swallowed hard but remained mute. We finalized the agreement under those stark terms. I would pay the mortgage. She would cover utilities and insurance. Our finances would stay separate, no joint accounts. The kid's phone would remain on my plan. She could never block my number. If we divorced before Emma graduated, Sophia would leave the house, and I'd have primary custody. Support payments would be determined by arbitration, not by a judge. Medical checkups were mandatory before either of us entered a new relationship. I don't think we'll be intimate again, but if we are, wouldn't you want to know we're both healthy? I pressed. Checkups were required within 2 weeks of any new relationship, then every 6 months thereafter. Parenting responsibilities were defined clearly. Work was the only valid excuse for missing the kids' events. I feared she might prioritize a new lover over them. She protested this point, but I reminded her bluntly, Thomas wasn't so controlling that he stopped you from making a 5-minute call. You missed Oliver's birthday. She looked like she might cry. By the end of the meeting, we had a solid agreement in place. She even agreed to therapy, opting for a psychiatrist over a counselor. That night, I handed Sophia a phone book. Find a lawyer and a therapist, I instructed firmly. She contacted Blackwell, but he refused to represent her beyond the postnup, citing a conflict of interest as his firm was rapidly losing clients, a devastating blow for her. She scheduled appointments with a psychiatrist and our family doctor. I agreed to attend marriage counseling, not to salvage our relationship, but to gain some clarity. Meanwhile, I hired a contractor to convert the basement into my bedroom, and he started immediately. Sophia was furious. Her attempts to draw me back into our old life ignored as I moved my belongings into the kids' bathroom to avoid our master bedroom. One night, relenting to exhaustion, I slept in a bed again but wore pajamas. Sophia mocked me. PJs? Since when? Noticing her only in underwear, I remembered my usual lack of attire. As expected, I woke up to her hand wandering, but I had anticipated this and used a lock device to prevent further advances. She pulled away angrily. What the hell? Why are you doing this to yourself? I need you, I scoffed, dismissing her. You didn't want me before you got caught. Now suddenly it's urgent? Does it hurt your ego that I don't want you anymore? I met her stunned gaze. I spent all that time wondering what I did wrong, what I lacked, what made you go and be with someone else. Then I realized, it was all on you. I continued as tears welled in her eyes. You walked into that hearing like nothing happened, expecting life to reset. You haven't even apologized. And at Jake's office, you as much as admitted you still plan to see Claire and Lucas. She flinched. Sign the agreement. Do whatever you want. My voice was ice cold. She sat there, speechless. You haven't had therapy. You don't know if your infection is cleared up, yet you think sex will fix this? I shook my head. Lesson 1. Sex doesn't solve problems. It just satisfies lust. And I have none for you. I left her there and crashed on the basement couch, a miserable night's sleep following. By 4 a.m., I gave up trying to rest and went upstairs. While setting out my clothes, I checked Sophia's phone. Dozens of messages from Claire and Lucas, coaching her on how to win me back. Their real goal? To get me to side with Thomas to prevent his disbarment. I showered early and left before Sophia even woke, letting her manage the morning routine for once. At work, I called Jake and told him about the messages. He promised to inform Detective Clark. Collusion and witness tampering were serious charges. The ADA might even subpoena her phone. Jake also confirmed the postnup was nearly final. Even Blackwell was pressuring Sophia to sign. It was fair. Since it was Friday, I texted her, "Will you be home Saturday night?" Her reply was brief, "Yes." "Good, I'll be out," I typed back. She didn't respond. Truthfully, I had no real plans. I just needed some space to breathe. At home, she was getting ready to go out. "The postnup is ready. Can we meet at Jake's office Monday?" I asked. She nodded, distracted by her makeup. "Who are you going out with?" I inquired, curious despite myself. She stood up abruptly. "Claire and Lucas. she declared defiantly. It doesn't violate your damn agreement. I shrugged, unfazed. No, it doesn't. But be careful, I warned, a sudden concern creeping into my voice. They have a different story than you. If you change yours, the ADA might charge you with perjury. And if you go to the Bennett house, that could be considered witness tampering. Her eyes narrowed, wary of the implications. Seems the AD really doesn't like the judge, I added, trying to underline the seriousness of her situation. She crossed her arms, considering. Maybe you should stay at a motel, I suggested, half serious. Doubt Claire and Lucas would be comfortable coming here while I'm home. You assume I'm sleeping with them, she snapped. I smirked. Given your track record, it's a fair assumption. She glared at me. You really think that little of me now? I shook my head, disappointment heavy in my voice. You cheated in our bed with 2 women and expected me to wait for you. I know you haven't been with anyone since coming home, and you must be climbing the walls. I gestured toward the door, so go have fun. She made one last desperate attempt. Look, I'm right here. If you screw me right now, I won't go out. Please, Cal. Just touch me. I walked out without a word. A minute later, I heard cursing and something hitting the wall. Shortly after, she stormed out, not looking like someone headed for a date. I chuckled to myself. Maybe she didn't need to seduce them anymore. The evening was quiet. The kids weren't worried, and neither was I. It was Friday, so they stayed up late. Surprisingly, Sophia came home around 10 and joined us for board games. Saturday morning, a cop knocked with a search warrant for her phone. She wasn't pleased. I hoped she hadn't deleted those messages. I'd already seen them. After the officer left, she vanished into the bedroom. The fall air was crisp. We raked leaves while the kids played, and for a moment, things felt almost normal. That night, I ventured out for the first time since college. There was no excitement, no anticipation of love like there once was, just a yearning for peace. I caught a movie that Oliver would love, planning to take him later. I dined alone at a diner, then stopped by a pub for a beer and a game of pool. That's when she approached, tall, with light brown hair and green eyes. Life seemed to have dealt her a rough hand. You lonely? She asked, nodding at my wedding ring. I figured she might be a working girl, but invited her to sit anyway, craving just a conversation. She introduced herself as Crystal, likely not her real name. We talked. She sipped wine. I nursed my beer. I shared a short version of my story. Your wife's an idiot. She doesn't deserve you, she commented. I chuckled. Hard to argue. She was attractive, but I wasn't interested. After about an hour, she received a call and had to leave. It was exactly what I needed, a conversation free from manipulation. I was whistling as I walked into the house around 11. Sophia was waiting, anxious. Did you sleep with someone? Are you happy now? Want to tell me all the details? Watch me fall apart, she demanded, breaking down sobbing. I let her cry. When she finally composed herself, I asked, why does this bother you so much? You plan to have me jailed, take my money, live out your fantasies. You denied me intimacy for months. What's the issue now? She looked lost, struggling with the reality. Intellectually, I know I cheated, and we agreed to an open marriage. But I always assumed you'd be there when I came home, that we'd be together again. Now I'm realizing you won't be. It's a double standard, but it's how I feel. She hesitated. I want to make love to you, but you keep shutting me out. I know I messed up, but I'm trying to fix it, and you won't let me. I destroyed our friendship and betrayed your love, but you're doing everything you can to make sure we don't survive this, she continued, not entirely wrong. She had craved freedom while expecting me to wait. She wanted me to suffer, but not to move on. She was making amends, but only in ways that cost her nothing. She still hadn't fully grasped the damage she had done. Did you sleep with them last night? I asked bluntly. No, she replied quickly. I recorded them. The cops have my phone now. They admitted they want to destroy our marriage and turn me into their slave. Oliver and Emma were also part of their plan. I will never see them again. My stomach dropped. Oliver and Emma. This wasn't just an affair. It was something far worse. I had spent the past week making Sophia feel the pain I had endured, but I had lost sight of the real issue, keeping our kids safe. The marshals were cornered, their powers slipping away. Desperate people don't go down quietly. We need a plan, I said. I saw a movie, had a couple of beers, and talked to a woman at a bar. That's it. I met her eyes. I'm done punishing you. We need a truce. The marshals are still dangerous, and we're their targets now. She hadn't considered that. What had started as an affair for fun had spiraled into control and fear, preventing her from leaving until the hearing. She had thought Claire and Lucas were her allies, not realizing they were only protecting themselves. The truce starts now, I stated. Get some rest. Tomorrow we focus on protecting our family. I'm not letting you back into my bed, but I'll stop highlighting my actions. Not that I'm looking for anyone else. She exhaled in relief, perhaps thinking she was winning me back. She wasn't. I still planned to sign the post-nup on Monday. For the first time in months, I took her hand and led her to our room. She undressed and climbed into her bed. I entered the bathroom, secured the chastity device, slipped on boxers, and crawled into my twin bed. Sophia's disappointment was palpable. Perhaps she had hoped for more eagerness on my part. I turned off the light, but my thoughts raced uncontrollably. I didn't own a gun, and Sophia didn't know how to shoot. The security at the kids' school was laughably minimal. How easily could someone target them? Wrapped up in these worries, I hardly noticed when Sophia slid into my bed, wrapping herself around me as she had on our first night together. Despite the turmoil inside me, sleep eventually claimed me. When I awoke, my back was sore. Twin beds were fine in college, but hardly suitable now. After freeing myself from the device and attending to morning necessities, I lingered, lost in memories of better times. The love we shared, the children we brought into the world. Then, the harsh reality of recent months snapped me back. I considered just sleeping with her. Perhaps it would smooth over some edges. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't solve anything. She believed sex could fix our issues, but our problems ran much deeper. Hearing the kids in the hallway, I quickly dressed and went to prepare breakfast. Cold cereal would suffice today. Sophia just lay there, watching me, possibly scheming still. I shrugged it off and left the room. The kids ate and prepared for their day. We attended the late church service, a new routine we started after Sophia initially left. It wasn't clear if it truly helped the kids, but I hoped they appreciated her presence. Afterward, I shared with the pastor that Sophia might start attending with us. He expressed his pleasure and offered his support. Back home, I laid out my new security plan. I was filing for a protection order against Claire, Thomas, and Lucas, discussing enhanced security measures with the schools, acquiring a rifle for home defense, and applying for a concealed carry permit. Sophia frowned at the mention of bringing a firearm into our home. I don't like guns in the house, she admitted. Neither do I agreed. But we need to be prepared. The thought of someone hurting Oliver or Emma is unbearable. She swallowed hard but conceded. On Monday morning, after dropping off the kids, I met with their school principals. Initially skeptical, they turned pale when I stressed my seriousness about holding them accountable for my children's safety. Later at work, I called Aaron, who confirmed that the threats from the marshals were credible and urged immediate action on the protection order, which Jake was already handling. That afternoon, I visited a gun shop. Being inexperienced, I sought advice from the salesman who recommended a Kimber 9mm for its compact size and ease of concealment, describing it as an effective belly gun for close-range defense. For home protection, he suggested a tactical rifle with a short barrel and folding stock. Expensive, but ideal for close quarters. I purchased both, though I had to wait due to background checks and mandatory waiting periods. For a week, all was quiet. Then, Emma's school called with alarming news. My parents had supposedly come to visit the kids, which was impossible since they were both occupied elsewhere and not due to visit until the weekend. I rushed to the school, finding Emma safe but puzzled in the principal's office. I owe you an apology. The principal confessed after explaining a suspicious couple had tried to take Emma by claiming to be her grandparents and using her full name, which was a mistake. We'll be even more cautious now, he assured me, recognizing the seriousness of the situation. That afternoon, an ominous text arrived from a blocked number. We almost had your daughter today. We won't try the school again. You know what you need to do. The message was chilling. I contacted Aaron immediately. An officer attempted to trace the call while I began carrying the rifle in my car for school runs and kept the pistol on me at all times. Emma's birthday was approaching, and despite security concerns, we didn't cancel. Instead, we hired private security, and Aaron even attended. The event went smoothly, a relief amidst the tension. Meanwhile, I started self-defense classes, knowing that if I ever lost my gun, I'd need to defend myself and my family by other means. Sophia and I also practiced regularly at the shooting range, becoming more comfortable handling our firearms. As Thomas's hearing neared, everything shifted. The day before the hearing, Thomas and Claire's children publicly offered to testify against them, hinting that Thomas had exploited them too. The next morning, there was no hearing. Thomas was found dead, hanging in his garage. Aaron showed me Thomas's last note, which blamed me for his downfall, though something about the scene felt staged. No chair, no ladder, nothing to suggest how he'd managed it. It seemed Thomas had become a liability to someone, and they made sure he couldn't talk. Even Aaron found it suspicious, but the DA showed no interest in pursuing it further. Claire sold their house and moved, possibly with Lucas. The threat seemed to vanish as quickly as it had escalated, leaving me prepared for a battle that dissolved before it could begin. Now, there were no threats, no fights to anticipate. I locked the pistol away in a biometric safe and secured the rifle in storage. The kids remained blissfully unaware of the true dangers they had narrowly avoided. Sophia and I were thankful they could still see the world as a safe place. One morning, a figure who commanded a mix of respect and fear around town entered my office unexpectedly. "Mr. Turner, you don't know me, and I won't approach you after today," he began, his tone solemn. "I need to express regret for the distress caused by Judge Bennett. I've severed ties with him after learning the truth. Some of my former associates attempted to contact your daughter and made that threatening call. I assure you, they will not bother you again." With that, he departed as swiftly as he had arrived, leaving me shaken in my seat. Moments later, my secretary checked in. "You okay?" she asked, noticing my distress. "Yeah, everything's fine," I replied with a forced smile, masking my turmoil. Life gradually resumed a semblance of normalcy. The basement bedroom was completed, and I moved in, marking a physical boundary Sophia reluctantly accepted with her psychiatrist's help. In a hopeful gesture, she replaced the master bed with a king-sized one, wishfully thinking I might return. I didn't. We tried marriage counseling, but the sessions quickly focused on my so-called faults. "Maybe your expectations were too rigid," the therapist suggested. "Perhaps you need to be more open-minded." My frustration boiled over, and by the second session, I had enough. Sophia continued her sessions with both the psychiatrist and the counselor, receiving mixed messages. Meanwhile, I started dating casually but kept my expectations low. Anyone willing to date a still-married man likely had their own complexities. Sophia occasionally went out, dressed nicely but modestly. I never checked whether she brought anyone home. That was part of our agreement. Occasionally, I had one-night stands. The sex was satisfactory but forgettable. Despite our personal conflicts, we maintained a united front for the kids. We sat together at Emma's choir performances and Oliver's sports games, clapping and cheering like any other family. As time passed, Oliver moved 400 miles away to study robotics, and Emma, now 18, prepared for nursing school about 100 miles from home. She knew she wouldn't return. On the day she left for college, I also made a significant decision. Quietly, I had been tracking Claire Bennett and Lucas Carter. They still had to answer for their actions. I secured a job near their location and prepared to move. Oliver, sensing the impending changes, seldom returned home. Emma, too, understood, noticing the unresolved tension between her mother and me. As she drove off to college, a man approached us on the sidewalk. "Are you Mrs. Turner?" he asked. Sophia nodded, and he handed her an envelope. "You've been served," he declared. Sophia's face drained of color as confusion set in. I sighed deeply. "When I allowed you back into this house, we agreed to stay together for the kids. Now they're gone. Our marriage ended years ago, Sophia. I can never forgive you, and now it's time for me to move on." As if on cue, a moving truck pulled up. Movers began loading the boxes I had packed while Sophia was at work. She looked utterly stunned as I climbed into my car and backed out of the driveway. I called her parents. "She's going to need you," I said, a trace of concern in my voice. Though she was no longer the woman I once loved, she had been my partner, the mother of my children. Now, all we shared were memories and offspring who no longer needed us daily. I settled into a modest apartment near my new job. It was practical, though it felt nothing like home. Home was where my children had been. I should have been focused on rebuilding my life, finding someone new, but Claire and Lucas's punishment still loomed large in my mind. Each evening, I gathered intelligence. Claire had ascended to a hospital VP role, and Lucas worked night shifts as a nurse. Their professional lives were staggered. Their personal lives, I discovered, remained intertwined. They lived together in a well-to-do neighborhood where status clearly mattered to them. One day, I followed Claire home, parked nearby, and watched. At 5:30 p.m., she left for work. I saw my chance. Disguising myself as a prospective homebuyer, I inquired with neighbors about the area, feigning interest in moving my family from a crime-ridden city to a safer locale. Neighbors shared freely. Some gossiped about the community's lesser vices. Others mentioned Claire and Lucas's reclusive, quiet lifestyle. They had lost their power without Thomas, but that didn't undo the damage they had inflicted on my family. One afternoon, I found Lucas sunbathing. I quietly taped the patio door lock open. That evening, when I knew Claire would be alone, I returned, slipped inside, and removed the tape. Inside, I planted a device that emitted looping noises of glass breaking and heavy footsteps. As Claire investigated the sounds, I waited until she was close enough, then abruptly silenced the device. "Hello," she called out into the quiet, flipping the light switch. "Payback's a witch," I shouted, charging at her. Startled, she stumbled and fell down the stairs. I quickly turned off the light, checked her pulse with a pin light. She was unconscious but breathing. I left as silently as I had entered. No news followed. Weeks later, I noticed a wheelchair ramp being installed at their house. Lucas wheeled Claire inside. She had suffered spinal damage and would never walk again. My plan had worked. They were broken, and finally, I could begin to move on.